So basically, I'm going to go through what I said to you before, Jane Laura. I'll go through it again. So basically, what you're wearing is a pulse oximetry. It's what I used for 13 years on the road as a paramedic, and it takes your pulse. It shoots a red light through your finger, so it doesn't have to be on the finger. It just has to shoot the light through a pulsing vessel. Super cool. So I've put it on people's earlobes. I put it on their finger this way instead of this way. Yeah.
Oh.
I put it this way instead of this way. I put it that way because their nail polish was too dark. I put it on toes of children. Yeah. Toes, earlobes, and fingers in different directions, different fingers, thumbs. It doesn't really matter. It just has to shoot the light through a vessel, meaning like an artery or a vein.
Wow. So wouldn't the earlobe be the perfect spot then? Because it's so soft and nothing's there?
Yeah, but sometimes there's not enough there to grab. Like the finger is perfect because there's so much to hold on to. You know what I mean? But it will work on the earlobe. You could just try put it on yourself even if you get a pulse that you know it's reading, right? And what it's taking, basically, it's taking your pulse rate. So how the pulsations of your heartbeat, that's how it's taking your pulse. And it's called a pulse oximetry because it measures bound gas to your hemoglobin. Now, everyone will tell you is that it's measuring bound oxygen, but it's actually just bound gas. And we say it's actually bound gas, but we assume it's oxygen because all of our patients are well. So it's obviously oxygen. But I pulled people out of a fire and I put a pulse oximetry on them. It's reading 98% and they're blue. It's because it's carbon monoxide's bound to it now instead of oxygen. So it just measures bound oxygen, but all of our patients are healthy and well. They're well perfused. So you can assume that they're happy and healthy, and that's going to be oxygen bound to their finger. So if it's 98%, that means 98% of the hemoglobin in your bloodstream is bound to oxygen. That's what that percentage actually means. And anywhere between 95 to 98 is fine. I mean, leaving even lower is still fine. The older you get, obviously, any health problems with smoking or any lung disease, it'll drop a little bit. But everything is happy and healthy between that 95 to 98%. Sure, you get a child, you'll get 99 and even 100, but 100 is not very common. I've seen 100 only a couple times.
Never seen it.
A couple times on the road with very, very healthy people. Like it's never perfect, you know what I mean? Now, that being said, so when they're measuring the oxygen and they're measuring your pulse rate, I always use this easy example. If your pulse is 60 beats a minute, we can assume that there's one beat every second. In a minute, you have 60 beats. There's 60 seconds in a minute. So it's every second you have a pulse beating. But when you hook up electronics and very precise measurement, it's never actually a second. It could be 980 milliseconds, 1020 milliseconds. It's around a second, but it's give or take a few hundredths of a second because it's measuring it exactly. And the reason that's important, that's where you get your variability in your heart rate. So all the study on heart rate variability, you want lots of variability in your heart rate. So you don't want it precisely on a second every single time. You want a few 800 milliseconds. You want maybe 1200 milliseconds. You want 1100. You want 950. You may want a 700, a 1300. You want variability hovering around that 1 second, but you do want a variability. And what that tells us as practitioners that is a healthy nervous system, because your heart rate, or your autonomic nervous system, has the ability to switch between fight and flight relatively quick. And anybody stop me on any questions that we're going here. So your autonomic nervous system is branched into two. We know that it's the parasympathetic, that's the rest and digest. And then there's a sympathetic nervous system, which is the fight or flight, going back to when we're living in caves, right? We're all hunting. They always say a saber-toothed tiger's chasing you. You have to run away or you're going to fight. Now you're back at your camp. You're not fighting and you're running away. Now you're going to eat your meal. So you're now in the rest and digest. Everything else turns off except for your GI is now activated. And you're more relaxed now. Your pupils are now going to be they're going to be more fixed, because when you're thinking fight or flight, what do you need? What does your body need to do to run away or to fight, right? Increase perfusion to your muscles. You're going to be running, you're going to be fighting. So your peripheral vasculature is going to dilate, so more blood flow can flow to your muscles. Your pupils are going to dilate larger, so you can collect in more light, so you can see what's going around. You're not going to digest anything. You're not going to be going to the bathroom when you're fighting. I always tell the boys, or even myself, I said to Amanda, if you have to go to the bathroom, start jogging on the spot. That GI is going to turn off and you won't have to use the bathroom anymore. So it works relatively incredibly. So when you're in rest and digest, you're going to go to the bathroom. And when you're in fight or flight, the bathroom is turned off. Like the GI is completely turned off. Also in the fight or flight, people can get very pale because that blood perfusion is taken away from your skin, put into your muscles, and to protect your core. So those core organs are going to get perfused with blood. And also, if you've been eating and your GI is turned off and you're in fight or flight, you're going to get nauseous. That's another thing with nausea comes in with people who are in the stressful environments. They get nauseous because their GI is turned off and they've had a meal. So you have these two branches of your autonomic nervous system, which is the parasympathetic and the sympathetic. And the HRV, which is heart rate variability, tells a tale of how well you can switch between the two. And we can see that by seeing variability in your, it's called the RR interval. So not the rate of your pulse, but the space between your pulse rates. That's called the RR interval. It's called the RR interval because this beeping heart rate thing that everybody knows from movies and pop culture, that beep, beep, the peak of that. What's that? The peak of that sharp wave is called the R. It's called the QRS complex, and the R is the top. So the R to R, that's the interval, and that's going to be a certain number. It's going to be under a second or over a second. So when you get somebody on a prime and they put the pulse oximetry on, and then you get a reading, the prime is going to create a histogram. And the histogram is basically a bunch of bars, and you can see it when you put into Kubios. We'll go over Kubios in a second. You'll see a bar graph, and that bar graph is going to show where all your RR intervals sit. So I've seen some histograms that are very narrow. You have only from 1 second to 1.1 seconds. So there's not a lot of variability. All the bars fit between those two numbers only.
You'll just see like one skinny
Yeah, you'll
row.
see one row or two rows, if that. But then we've seen people that have as low as 0.7 and up to 0.3 and lots of bars in between.
And
So
that's
that's lots of variability. That's a very healthy heart rate variability.
Can you explain why it denotes a healthy nervous system having that variability in your heart rate? Did you already talk about that? Like why that's?
I think it's just my understanding is that if you're able to switch between the two, you're more
stuck in one.
Yeah, well, it's probably being stuck in one of them, but to be able to switch between the two of them is just indicative of good health. I couldn't tell you exactly why, but I mean, it kind of makes sense to me if I can go from fight or flight to rest and digest and not have a prolonged interval in there. I can just do that. It's like imagine going for a run and you stop your run, and then maybe within a few minutes, your heart rate's back to being normal and you're back to your everyday life. You've gone for a run, but imagine you've gone for a run and now it's been half an hour and your heart rate is still really high. To me, that seems odd and not healthy.
Yeah, if you have something super stressful that happens and it's over and you're like, okay, I'm good now.
Yeah, I'm talking physical stress, but mental health
but
also.
Something stressful happens and you can't get over and it's still really, you're hanging onto it, like you're not able to let go, right?
Yeah, and imagine if you're in rest and digest and you have to go chase the bus, you start running and your heart rate is now bumping up to perfuse more oxygen and blood to all your vasculature. That's also very bad. You're going to be extremely short of breath. So to have that variability is just indicative of good health. And everything I've tried to find, it's always HRV, heart HRV is good. And that's all the studies with elite athletes. It's all about the HRV. They want to know that you have a high HRV, lots of variability, which is indicative of good health, to switch between the two parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system. And as far as the prime goes, those numbers, that's HRVC, which is the HRV coefficient, they call it. It's a number that Swissbionic has created. I've never found it anywhere else. And so what that is, we've talked about this again before,
That number 7 being the top, right?
whatever, when you're on the prime and you have the pulse oximetry on it, it's going to take a bunch of RR intervals and start plotting a histogram. And if you have lots of variability, then it's going to bump up the intensity because you have a happy autonomic nervous system. You can take a bit more of the field and it's going to offer that to you. But then it's going to bump it up and then your body's going to take the field and maybe it was too much. And then that next HRV coefficient is going to be lower. It's saying my body's not happy with this field. And then the prime is going to lower the intensity again. The video that I watched with Wolf, he says he starts everybody at 50 because 50 has lots of room to grow, but also lots of room to go down. Right?
Yeah, that's what I do.
Start somebody at sensitive. If sensitive is too much, the prime can't lower the intensity. It's already at the lowest. You know what I mean? You start somebody at 200 and their body's loving it. You can bump up one more and they still love it. You can't go any higher. So he says he always starts everybody off at 50 because there's lots of room to go in either direction. If you have the HRV, if you're going with the pulse oximetry, so the system can read your body.
How come? I have a question. I don't know if you'd know this. The day Richard's sister passed, we have the little thing that we use on your finger.
Yep.
We have one. And so she hadn't been feeling well like before. So regularly for a couple of weeks, he was using that and taking her blood pressure. And it turns out on the Friday, she had a massive heart attack, but she didn't die until Monday. But her oxygen thing was like still in like 98. Her blood pressure was normal. Like everything through it was normal. So wouldn't it be weird? Because
she had a massive heart attack, but she was
Friday.
But she was vitally well.
And she wasn't feeling well. She felt really bad. And she felt really bad. That was the worst day was the Friday when she had the heart attack. We found out from the coroner that was the day she had had it a couple days previous. And he couldn't believe how long her heart stayed pumping till it finally gave out on Monday. But she was still, she was still getting oxygen and her blood pressure was fine.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of can go into that. Where was the heart attack? What part of her heart was affected? You know, I mean, I've seen heart attacks that people literally drop dead right then and there because they call it widowmaker. It's like the left ventricle that is affected because the right coronary artery descending is affected. You know, I mean, so it's difficult to answer because I mean, a heart attack, it's like a stroke. So many sections of the brain can be affected, right? I've had patients that had a stroke, they're completely fine, but they can't speak because that part of the brain was affected, right? She had a heart attack and she lasted X amount of days still, but maybe, well, I'm guessing that part of the heart that was affected, it wasn't going to kill her right then and there, you know, and she felt shitty after for sure because something's going on, but obviously her body was compensating. So like your body has lots of systems to compensate when something goes wrong. It doesn't just, there's an issue, okay, I'm throwing in the towel. We have a lot of these compensatory systems, right? You get shot, you're not going to spill out your blood pressure's not going to drop like that, right? Your blood shunts to the core, protect the organs, increase your heart rate to bump up blood pressure, right? You're going to get thirsty because you need more volume. Like it compensates and compensates until it can't anymore. So why it was reading her well, I don't know. But obviously the part of her heart that was affected with her heart attack, it wasn't as crucial at that time. And she probably compensated well until she couldn't anymore. And that's when she died. You know, it's complicated. These heart attacks and strokes and all these things like this. So once you get down that rabbit hole of how the body works, it's just absolutely incredible what it's capable of doing until it can't. You know, like with kids compensate really, really well and then they crash, right? Kids compensate well with their heart, but anything respiratory with children, they don't compensate well. Like I've seen kids turn blue in a matter of seconds. Like they do not compensate well with breathing, right? Their circulatory compensates very well. Respiratory system does not. With Richard's sister, I don't know. It's a good question, but I mean, it'd be probably more asked of the cardiologist or whoever has her, or the coroner with actually what kind of heart attack it was, because there's a plethora of types of heart attacks you can have. And again, you compensate until you can't anymore, and that's when things happen. Right, people. You press the gear, which is the settings. You have your USB. Put it in the side here. It doesn't matter which one you use, they're both the same. Record management. You choose one that says HRV. So you'll have a client that they would put the pulse oximetry on and they would have HRV on there. So this HRV happened on December 7th at 8:43 a.m. 2023.
The ones that say TXT and all that, don't worry about those. You're just gonna care about the ones that say HRV.
So all you do is hit the plus. All right. Let's take excessively long.
Because there's so many. It's not that many.
What's already on there?
Oh yeah. Okay. So then the ones at the bottom are the newest ones. So then you can see that it's there. And then, yeah,
get out of
just go
here.
back, just take the USB out. Then you're going to put the USB into the laptop.
I am going to go to, so I've opened Kubios.
Is it on share screen?
Yeah, it's on share
I don't
screen.
like Kubios.
Okay, go do something. So I go to this little file right here, open new file. And right away it opens, there's the USB. You can see the USB drive, and this is a file. You want the file right here. So I just click on that. I open it. And here is the file that's been opened. Now, what I always do right off the bat, I just go so we can print up a PDF version, which is a lot simpler to understand. Sure. So I go to this little disk here on the top left corner. There was the file to open a new file, and this is to save it. But when you click that, it saves as a PDF version. So, and I would call this whoever the client is. So you can just erase that. And I would say, let's say Amanda Zaglinski, she came at a keep the date and the name. So I know who it is. And it saves to my desktop. I click save.
Yeah, always put the date and the name, because then the next week they come and you can't remember which was the newest one or the oldest one.
And it's processing, saving the results.
So you don't ever work from this.
Never.
Okay.
Okay, so now I just minimize this. And then here is my file that's been saved as the PDF. So if you open this, this is now nice and simple. It's easy to read. So here is that histogram I was talking about. Here, let me make this bigger. Here's, oh,
That's
actually,
the
it's actually a
full
lot
report.
smaller. It's not. Okay, here we go. So here's the histogram. So this client, they have their pulse. It went from their, sorry, not their pulse, their RR interval. That's the time between the two peaks of the pulse. They went as low as, I mean, as fast as half a second, like 0.4 seconds, to as long as 1.5 seconds at times. So they have lots of variability, as you can see. The majority of it is at like between 0.9 and like 0.3. The norm for them is like, what is it? Like 1.1. So their pulse is going to be roughly about 60. Their average pulse is going to be about 60.
55.
And here, if you look at their mean heart rate, it's 55. So exactly what this histogram says. If you go in beats per minute, there's is roughly about a second, give or take. So I would say 60, but the mean heart rate is 55. It shows their mean RR. I keep using my finger to point, but you can't see my finger, so I'll use this. Here's the mean RR, and that is the mean RR interval. So the average RR interval they have is over a second. So the longer it is, the better. That means you have a nice low heart rate, a nice low average heart rate. There's your mean heart rate. So their average heart rate is 55. Their minimum heart rate, they went as low as 49, and their maximum heart rate went as high as 83.
But
So
does it make sense because they have stress index is nice and low at 4.6?
Yeah.
It makes sense that they would have a broad variability.
yes,
But I've seen
but
people.
not always.
not
There's
always.
other
It's
things that come
very
into play. Like,
confusing, or you think that, and then this bar is super thin, and they have no variability, but their stress index is like a 3.
but do they have some out here? Like even a couple of out here?
No,
Like, sometimes you can't even see
I've
it.
seen it like such a thin.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know.
More often than not, if there's a nice wide histogram, the stress index is going to be low. More often than not. Not always. Now, the PNS index, you want this to be a positive number. Anywhere between -2 to +2, you want it on the positive side. But anything above +2, they'd call them a high performer, like super low stress. If you have negative numbers in the parasympathetic tone, they're living in a stressful environment. And that goes opposite for the sympathetic. You want a negative number. You don't want a positive number. I can send out that HRV help document I created out again, so people want to look at it. So all we ever look at are these two bell curves. We look at this box right here that has that mean RR, which is the average time between heartbeats. So theirs is 1092 milliseconds. So it's just a hair over a second is their average time between heartbeats.
And that's good.
And that's nice. You don't want anything. You don't want an average heart rate. Like the average heart rate globally is between 60 to 100. That's what we call normal heart rate. Anything over 100, they have tachycardia. Anything below 60 is too low. Elite athletes, swimmers, their average heart rate's in the 40s, and that's normal. Like we would need to know that. Like I've had clients, their heart rate is 40, and I'm like, that's really low. They're like, yeah, I'm an Olympic swimmer. Oh, okay, that makes sense. Then that's totally cool. So, and then stress index, anything from 5 to 10 is average. So anything below 5 is fantastic. And then there's these things, I'll be completely honest, I haven't looked into it. You can study HRVs your entire life. There's so many statistics that go into it. And I haven't even looked at all this stuff. There's just too much to get into. So this blue box right here is all we do. These two bell curves, and then the mean RR, mean HR, and the stress index. It's all of this stuff here. Yeah. And to dump it in there is pretty easy. Like you said, just from the stick, you put it in there, open, and then save it as a PDF. And then I have a file on my computer. We put all those PDFs into there for the clients.
And then
So,
every client has their own file.
yep. So they
if
can
we
look at
just-
them over the time.
We just cut this part out because it's going to show, since you can have one user, it's always going to show Conrad's name on the top. So I just cut this out and put it right into that client's file and send that to them and say, this is your report from this date. If I send them this whole thing, it's going to say Conrad. And they're going to be like, why are they sending me Conrad's report?
Yeah.
So
Because
Oh.
this is
we
the
just-
free version.
we just show this part. Yeah.
The free version does more than what we needed to do.
Yeah. The free version allows one user though. But we can use it on everybody, but we just have to show that this is for
Yeah.
my clients when they
Like
were
I
here.
send this file to Amanda and she literally just cuts that.
Yeah.
You open it in like a photo app and you just cut out, like what's that
Crop
called?
it.
Crop out that blue rectangle and then send that off.
And if
to
you
whoever
want
wants
to
to know.
include this part too, you
But
can.
this is in there.
Yeah,
ones that we want
I
are in
keep
there.
it simple for them and I just send this part here in the blue, just that, just
Yeah,
to not
the
overcomplicate.
blue.
Because even with that, people are like, what am I reading here? This is so complicated. And then we can easily explain it to them. So the next time when we send it, they're like, oh, I can read it now. It looks like I'm more chill than I was last time, or
Yeah. And the blue box has been highlighted for a reason. Like this is clearly they've tried to truncate everything into a nice readable thing.
that's the most important part there.
So
What was the SNS index variability again?
SNS,
That's
Yeah,
normal.
so you
Yeah.
want this in the negative, right? Somewhere 0 to -2. Anything
Zero.
lower is a high performer.
Or if you look here, around 5 or lower is really nice.
She's talking about this number.
Mm.
not
That's
talking about that.
Oh, okay.
And
Yeah.
-2 and lower is high performer.
Yeah, I have that document. I'll send it out again. It's all in there, super easy to read. It has like, it talks about the bell curve, and if you're in these numbers, you're a high performer for the PNS. And here you're a high performer for the SNS and in there.
Yeah, and the more to the right, both of these triangle lines are, the more to the right they are on both colors, the better.
Yeah, just think right is the way to go, like you're right.
Yeah, you're in the right direction.
You're in the right direction. You want to be on the right side of the bell curve.
Yeah.
Do any of these measurements, like the RR distribution, do any of them contribute to someone being diagnosed with an irregular heartbeat or an arrhythmia or anything like that? Would these be anything used in that?
It does. I believe this first little, so right here, and I think it was Amanda that brought it up. This red line, isn't this, they take it out of the reading? You said something like that.
Mhm.
This is where they come in. August. This is where they take out any error. But I mean, if someone has an arrhythmia, they would know that, and then I don't know how that would play out in HRV reading, to be honest.
Amanda, you're
Because I
distracting us.
don't think we've had anybody that has an arrhythmia.
This guy's causing trouble.
Oh, I want him. I'm
Please,
coming
take-
to get him.
I'll put them in a package and mail them to you.
Doing you guys in trouble?
Yeah, that's a good question, but yeah, I mean,
Oh, Conrad, you know what I was gonna say, and maybe Laura, you and I can do this, because I haven't had it checked in a long time, but I used to have an irregular heartbeat.
oh, okay.
And check. And I asked that I totally forgot about it actually until I asked that question. But I'm just thinking I could picture somebody if they're using this regularly and perhaps they don't know they have an irregular heartbeat or an arrhythmia, and this shows something and it opens that door.
Mhm.
So I was just curious if some of these medically would contribute if someone went to a doctor's office or a hospital and they were diagnosed with that. But I think maybe I should do a bunch of.
Like we could
A
catch something early for somebody, we can
Yeah.
right away. Something came up that doesn't look right. We want you to go get checked, right?
But I'm just thinking how it would show in the graph here, because our graph here is the RR interval.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying is maybe I'll get on one every day. Maybe we'll measure me and see if it shows
Yeah.
up. See if I still
Yeah.
have it. I don't know. Maybe I don't have it.
Interesting.
And with people that have, so Jay's dad has a pacemaker, so he wouldn't
You can't
be
go
able
there.
to on this.
Yeah.
Like both, he couldn't do either, right? Like he couldn't do the spot or anything like that.
It's a
I mean, it's a yeah.
contraindication.
It's contraindicated technically.
Well, yeah.
Technically.
Yep.
The way Wolfgang says it though, anybody could use it. They only say that just in case.
Yeah.
Just to kick
God
their ass.
forbid he's on it and he has a
Okay.
heart attack while he's on the PMF. They're
They
gonna
would blame that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So if you have a
Like you said.
pacemaker, you can receive the Earth's magnetic fields.
yeah.
It'd be interesting is to see someone with a pacemaker on here, because their RR interval would be highly accurate. There's no variability. That's what it paces your heart at a certain rhythm. So I wonder, actually, that'd be pretty interesting to see somebody with a pacemaker.
I have someone in New Brunswick that wants to do it.
Yeah.
I'll let you know.
Yeah.
I know I have a client too. They changed it though, because the contraindication used to be only the old pacemakers that were like from the 70s or 80s. Anything past that was fine. And now they changed it to just pacemakers in general, because they're just scared. They're just scared something's going to happen to somebody while they're on the PMF. They'll so happen to have a heart attack while PMFing, and it's going to get blamed for that.